Okay, this is a different Phoroptor doing the same procedure of replacing the thrust washer. This is already with the replacement thrust washer on it, already lubricated. The ring gear here with the notches already lubricated. This plate is bent a little different from other plates. Instead of being more completely flat, the place where the ball bearing will sit is actually on the lubricated side of this plate, and it'll go right in that little circular space when it's reassembled. I've already lubricated on the inside of the guard here, and so I have to line up the appropriate notch with this marking while the axis is set on 15 degrees and that marking is lined up with 15 degrees on the axis position marked on the guard here. So this is the notch, or this is the notch that will fit into this place. The gear it meshes with, hard to see, is right in here. The problem is getting it notched into the gear in the back. Now as I have it meshed in place there, as I'm trying to turn it with this screwdriver, which is sitting in the notch in the back, it's not turning. Okay, so now to see, well, unfortunately though, it's out of line for the notch where the ball bearing is going to sit. So I have to lift it back up and try to place it back in position again. Okay, that looks pretty good. There's a certain amount of parallax, so it's hard to say if the notch is just in the right position, but there is a little bit of play on the plate that goes together on the back. So the next trick is to slide this into position without the gear lifting up. I'm going to try to hold the gear down in the back. With all the parts lubricated, in theory it should sort of slide into place. Okay. So you can see the bend in this case bends this way at where the ball bearing sits. Then next what I'll do is, I'm not sure I can reposition the camera, but next I'm going to do is to put one of the two screws in place on the inside. Okay, the next thing to do is to check the alignment, and it actually looks pretty good the way it's together, straddling the axis. And now when checking the power, it also seems to be pretty well straddling, lining up right on the arrows. I'll check more carefully, it might be off by a few degrees, but this is really ballpark. And because of the slotted nature of the holes in this bottom plate, it's possible to shift the position of where that screw is attached by a few degrees in one direction as needed to get better alignment of the JCC lens. Now this is pretty subtle, but if you, as you're looking through this opening onto the metal plate there, you see there's a gap between the plate and the guard where you can see the gears. But that gap is not even. Now the plate is binding right up against the guard, and so there's enough play in the position of those screws that it can be shifted a little bit so that it's no longer pressing against the frame, because it causes resistance when rotating the cylinder axis as that plate presses against the housing in certain positions. So I was able to readjust the position of this bottom plate enough so that even though it's a little asymmetrical here. It no longer presses against the side of the housing and now no longer has resistance to rotation, and it's maintained the same good alignment of the axis and power position on the JCC. So the position of the plate was shifted slightly, but not really this direction or that direction. It was actually moving a little bit side to side that way, so that the plate was pushed away from the outer part of the guard. Now moving on to the patient left bank, when I reassemble the cross-cylinder components, I tend to center the left bank on 165 degrees when I'm reassembling, because it gets me out of the way of this screw head, which lines up closer to 15 degrees on this side and lines up closer to 165 degrees on the other bank. So it simplifies the reassembly a little bit when that nut's not in the way. Oh, on a separate topic, which there's a video about Risley prisms. This is an example of a repainted Risley arrow. So this Risley arrow had worn out, and I successfully repainted it with black ink, as well as the fellow Risley on this Phoroptor was also repainted with black ink. Black paint. But again, it's only $22 for that gear ring, and probably a better outcome to just replace them in pairs.